Hey, what's up, bud?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How you been?
I've been okay.
Settling in?
Yeah, it's been quiet today, so it's nice.
Cool. How's
Getting,
everything out there in Georgia?
it's good. It's good. Just getting ready for summer. Starting to get hot. So,
Mhm.
what are you?
Oh, good. Everything here in St. Louis kind of starting to calm down a little bit with the tornado and all that crap. Everybody's kind of coming together, kind of fixing everything up there in St. Louis. And but yeah, so far, I mean, just settling in, getting summer started. So yeah, we're excited.
How did you do okay? Or you weren't affected
Yeah,
by the
no, I wasn't affected by it, but I try to do what I can to help out and volunteer, and
That's
so
awesome.
yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, we've been very lucky. We don't really have to worry about that. The worst we ever get is like residual hurricane rain and wind sometimes, just
Right.
because of where we're positioned. Um, so I have a lot of sympathy for people who are in those like tornado alleys. And, I think once, maybe like 15 or 20 years ago, a tornado came close or went through Atlanta. So it's very rare here.
Yeah, it's a weird spot because it could be give or take in certain spots in Missouri where a lot of it's more near the flatland kind of area or the South, but for some to kind of come through St. Louis was like, oh shit, really? Wow. So none of us are safe, It's like
Yeah,
it
yeah.
it's hardly ever happened, especially in like the St. Louis city of St. Louis. It hardly ever happens. So
Yeah, it's scary when you realize that it can happen.
it,
When you think like, oh, we never have to worry about that. And then you're like, okay, but maybe things are changing or,
I know
you know,
it's scary because you don't know. Like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, depending on what side, if it's science or with global warming or just nature's natural way of doing stuff, it's like sometimes there's a shift and you're going, oh shit, which side of the world are we going to be on and where's it going to hit? Is it going to be the fires? Is it it's just like
yeah, I
it's
know.
crazy.
I know it's getting crazy. All we really have to deal with here is the heat.
Oh yeah, I can
And,
only imagine there in Georgia. Shit, dude, I
yeah.
understand.
And then if we ever get hit with snow or ice, it's just a disaster. Like it can be not even an inch of snow. And you know what it is though? So I grew up in Maryland,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So I'm used to heavy snows. I've even seen a couple really, really bad blizzards and stuff. What it is here that's weird is that it will get warm enough
Mhm.
for the snow to melt on the pavement, and then it will drop below freezing like that. And then it'll just create black ice everywhere. So
Oh,
I know, I even give, people a bad rep here for being able to drive in the snow, but I can tell you it's a lot different because you don't get that like below freezing all day that allows the snow just to sit on the roads.
yeah.
And it might get a little slick, but it's going to be powdery. It's going to have a little bit of traction, maybe a little bit more. But here it'll just melt and then freeze as soon as the sun goes down, and it'll cause this real slick layer of black ice on everything. So it
Yep.
does get a little bit dangerous. But yeah, that's the worst that we have to deal
Yep.
with.
Yeah, we've had to deal with that a few times out here in Missouri. It just gets it's one way or the other where it's snow or it's it's a tricky spot. But let's get the hell off weather. Jesus.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be on my podcast, Trey. I really, really appreciate it. What's been going on with entertainment? Are you guys working on anything new? You got any shows coming up?
Yeah, so we recently, our last show actually was last fall in
Okay.
October. And what we realized is the band was really just burning out on playing live because we were in this weird cycle where we would go out, play a couple shows, do a small little tour, or do a couple one-off local shows opening for other bands. And we were constantly getting ready for that. Then we'd have some downtime. We'd start working in the studio or working on recordings, and then another show would pop up or another small little run of shows. So we'd stop and get ready for that. And it was causing us to not get anything done in the studio. So we stopped everything at the end of last year. And I've just been working in the studio with our producer, trying to wrap up something. I think we have like 12 plus songs in various
Oh,
stages of
yeah.
being done because we were constantly just doing recording in these little teeny bursts. We'd go in for a day or two, or we'd record in a home studio for like a couple of days a week, and then we'd have to get ready for shows. So we just stopped that. And what I've been doing is putting out as they get done what we're calling the New Voice Club mixes of songs that were on Gender, which was our debut
Yeah.
album. So that album was recorded. It was so DIY, and we were so lucky that people had interest in us and interest in the music. But it was recorded partially in a real studio and then partially just in a concrete room with my home studio.
Mhm.
So it was very DIY. We learned a lot since then, just touring and playing and becoming better musicians and better songwriters. And the songs had morphed to a point live where we wanted to re-record them in a way that we felt better represented their, you know, sound
Of
in the
course.
way the band is now. And that was a really good opportunity for us to test out a lot of things in the studio, see how we want to morph our sound a little bit. So that's what I've been doing, working with our producer here in Atlanta, finishing those up. And then I just throw those up on Spotify and Bandcamp
Yeah.
as they get done. There's no plan for a physical release unless someone comes along and says, we really love this stuff. We want to do a physical release. I would prefer if they did that, that they did a re-release of Gender, and then this was like a bonus thing for that.
Yeah.
Um, because I don't necessarily think they need to be have a physical release on their own. They're really meant as just sort of the sonic experiments, pushing the boundaries of where we are a little bit, what we can do musically, and then to move on to the next thing, which is recording the group of songs that we were working on when we did Horror, which
Yeah.
was our last LP. And those really were, again, studio demos that we had a label that contacted us and said, we want to put that out.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. So we got it together, got it mastered, put it out. The real intent of those was to take those demos and then bring them into the studio and record them, more professionally. So that will be what we do after we do this. So
Cool.
no shows in the near future. I think in the fall I think we're going to be playing in Athens in the fall, Athens, Georgia.
Yeah.
And then right now we are booked to play in Poland at the Release the Bats Festival in October. So that's really the next two things on our calendar.
Is this your first time going over and to
Yes.
Europe and everything?
Yeah, yeah. That's been a big goal of mine for a long time. And I just realized over the past year, I just have to will it to happen. So I
Yeah.
just started putting feelers out, like where can we get traction
Mhm.
in Europe?
Yeah.
Um, and Batcave Productions reached out to us and wanted to do a CD version of Horror. And since they did that, they're throwing this festival. And I asked them to put us on it, and they said yes. And so this will be our first trip in Europe. I'm hoping that we can maybe get a couple more shows in the UK or maybe Germany while we're there, but we'll see.
Dude, I'm telling you, from everybody that I've talked to, playing in Europe is going to be one of the best experiences because they are very giving. They
Yeah,
love that you're a musician. They will do what they can to make sure you got lodging, you get paid. You know what I mean? You get food, and like they are so hopefully you have that same experience. Everybody that I've talked to have been like, the UK, Europe, all that is a blessing because it's like they will treat you, so well compared to what sometimes they'll do here in the States, where it's like, oh,
yeah,
well, here's this much, then you got to go to the gas station and get a power bar. So, you know what I'm saying? Like these people are really like warming and welcoming. And I really hope that you get to play there because I think it's going to be a great experience for you. So,
yeah. That's great to hear. I'm really excited about it. Already, we've been treated way better just in through the booking process
yeah,
and what the offers were. Um, we really burnt out um, in America just grinding for a while.
we are,
This was a few years ago, but you have to put a lot of work into America and you have to be willing to sacrifice a lot. And it's worth it sometimes,
yep.
but it can really burn you out. And everyone has their own tolerance for that. So I'm looking forward to playing shows where artists are treated a bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think held to a little bit of a higher social standard.
Yeah.
Here it's very workmanlike. Like you are just working, working, working. And
Hmm.
that's what you're seen as, is almost like you're a contractor at every club you show up to, instead of like being, and of course, this is at our level. I mean, obviously, you get higher
Oh,
up, you're
yeah.
much different experience, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Damn, dude, that's awesome. Yeah, so you were let's go back to you were talking about working with producers. Is it the same producer you've been working with, or is this someone new?
Yeah, this is Chris Sampson. He's the same producer we've worked with for a long time, but
Yeah.
we've sort of grown together.
Mhm.
Um, he helped us he actually recorded our very first 7-inch single for
Mhm.
us. And then he's helped us over the years, either in engineering or mixing uh, a lot of our tracks, specifically drums. I
Mhm.
mean, you can get some nice, like, 3 or 4 mic drum takes at home, but to really get that bigger sound, we have to take it into a room in the studio. And we do a lot of that tracking there, and then whatever else we get is like icing. So he would help us with a lot of that. But over the years, he's grown a lot. We've grown a lot, and we gave him a few tracks just for mixing.
Yeah.
And when he gave them back to us, I was really shocked at just how cool they sounded. I mean, it was beyond mixing, to the point of really just shaping these songs into something that I don't think I would have been able to hear on my own and go, that's the direction we should go in.
Yeah.
Because I'm very sort of death rock focused, early post-punk, early goth. So there's some modern stuff that I've really gotten into, but after, I would say the late 90s, my music taste veers towards something different than
Sure.
that like early 80s, like death rock, post-punk sound. Um, so that's sort of where my heart is, and that's where we would work, in this very, very artsy kind of emotional space musically. And he just took these songs and brought them into a place that was really modern, really cool, and I would never have been able to take them. So it was
Yeah.
great. And then we started working with him again, and now, yeah, whenever I can, I just go in there and we put some stuff together and try to finish these last tracks that we have. So,
Yeah. Is this self-released or are you going through a label this time?
everything is self-released right now. Horror just came out through a label, Stick Figure Records, and then
Yeah.
Back
No, I have a
Productions
few
and all that.
friends on that label, so that's why it's really exciting
Awesome.
to talk to other stick figure. My first interview was with Femme Fatality, who's part of Stick Figure Records.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. When did was that recent, or was that?
That was last year. That was my very first interview last year. I just hit 1 years doing this podcast, and he was my first. I knew him for a while. We grew up, they're one of my main influences and stuff. So we kind of dug in deep with like, their first album, and then when they signed to Stick Figure Records, and we just kind of really just was just digging because I had to know all this stuff. But I love Stick Figure Records. But go
Yeah.
ahead and tell me more about
Yeah.
working with them.
No, Stick Figure has been great to us. So they put out horror. Gavin, who runs Stick Figure, will often reach out to me just to see what's going on,
Yeah.
Um, but right now, it's just getting these songs done and then figuring out, like, I will self-release no matter what. I always self-release digitally, but for physical releases, it all depends on how much it really costs to get those down. I would prefer to do really nice vinyl versions of everything that we do. But it's just the cost of it. Like, is it smarter for us to do that? And is the demand there for us to do it ourselves? Or can we shop it around and see if a label wants to pick it up? The other thing that I still feel is good about being on a label rather than being completely DIY is promotion and
Yes.
getting it into people's ears,
Yep.
because it's such a struggle. The signal to noise right now
Mhm.
is just so difficult because there's so many bands vying for attention. Social media still kind of works, but that's really just becoming a very flooded area,
Yeah.
for promoting music. Um, the whole blog. Yeah, I don't know if you remember, like, the whole blog thing that was happening, like in the like
Yeah.
2013, 2012, 2010 era. That was fantastic, but that's all gone now. So I am not the most like savvy self-promoter.
Sure.
So that's another reason that we might shop it around and see um, if a label wants to pick it up after we're finished everything.
It is tough because we're at a time where we have more freedom to kind of, one self-release, put things on Bandcamp where we're getting more of a percentage and stuff like that. And we kind of cut out the middleman. But then again, we kind of got to do the footwork, be creative, get people's attention, kind of go, hey, I got this. You know what I mean? Like you got to shake them and go, I got an album out. And they're like, oh, okay, we'll see. It's like, it's a real struggle with social media because you have the freedom, but then you're fighting for against everybody else who's grabbing other people's attention, and then they're like, oh, buy ads. So now you got to spend extra money to get more people's attention, and then it's got to be like a hey, you got to get them because they're constantly just doom scroll. It's just like
Yeah.
it's frustrating, dude.
Yeah. And
Frustrating.
I kind of have that down a little bit, like that idea of how you like get people's attention very
Yeah.
quickly. I really work on the artistic side of things and trying to make things look visually arresting so
Yeah.
that they'll at least stop people's eyes for a second to figure out, what they're looking at or what they're hearing. I think the sound of our music is unique enough that if it's targeted toward the right people, it's going to perk their ears a little bit, or they're going to say, like, this, what is this? This sounds familiar, but also kind of alien at the same time. Um, but I am not the most extroverted person, and that is the thing. I think the way the world is right now, um, you have to be extroverted. You have to be constantly jumping for attention. And some people are very good at it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not. And most of the bands that I really, really love are people who are a little bit more insular and a bit more like, I don't know. I don't want to say artistic minded because I think you can still be extroverted and artistic, but it's more that kind of like closed emotional environment that I like to be in. And I feel like I'm open myself up too much if I'm trying to push, push, push and be in people's face all the time. Um, so it is a challenge right now. And that's why I think maybe having some help with that would be a little bit better for our particular um, you know, project. But yeah, I have friends who are completely DIY and doing fantastic, but
Mm-hmm.
they are really great at being out there and being extroverted and being in front of people. And when I say in front of people, not on, I don't just mean only on stage, but just on the internet, on social media, just really throwing themselves out there into these, you know, conversations that seem to be like they happen in like split seconds. It's like, what's the trend conversation now? Okay, I'm going to throw myself into that, and then I'm going to throw myself into the next one, and then into the next one, and I just like it wears me out just
Yeah.
watching it. So yeah, I can't. It's hard for me to want to participate, but I know that like I've got to try to get out there a little bit more. I mean, it's kind of like with us, right? I think I took forever to
Oh,
get back to you about
no,
this. Now,
I'm
how
used
you
to I'm used to it with musicians because sometimes a lot of them are real quick to respond, but others I know a lot of them are busy. You know what I mean? So you kind of got to find that, that fine line where it's like, I've never been that kind of person where it's like, you know, uh, like real strict or anything. This podcast, it's so laid back. It's just so easy going where it's like, oh yeah, whenever you have time, or let's be real flexible, or this and that. So I've never been this sort of like, so I'm always extremely flexible with musicians because either some of them are, focus is, more towards, okay, I'm constantly on my computer, I'm recording or this, or some people, they'll have jobs and they can only talk with me around this time or that. So again, it's not a problem at all. I totally get it.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's something I try to be better about, but yeah, even just that kind of direct communication, sometimes I'll like disappear and I'm like, I'm not trying to ghost people.
oh,
I'm just literally shutting down and like cocooning for a while
yeah,
to, do whatever I need to do to find that artistic expression or that like quiet time to be able to produce a body of work.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes you need that, and I think a lot of it's great because again, there's that positive and negative side of being on social media. But one thing that I notice is that there's groups or like pages that are dedicated to goth, to post punk, to death rock, where they're taking the time to go, hey, check out this band. And even if they kind of edit together a video, I think one of them was yours. It was a clips from a, I think I posted it was a Possession with Sam Neill, and I can never get her name right, but it had your music on it.
Yeah.
And I
Oh
think
yes, 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 yes. Yeah.
it was done through, it was either something you put or it was a post punk, I think, shared. Anyway, so those are kind of my ways of connecting and kind of linking myself with other artists, where I'll follow something and I go, oh, okay. So I'll listen in, even if it's, a clip from a movie or whatever, I'll listen into the music, and it does grab my attention where I go, let me take note of that band. Let me hit them up later. So I really hope other people are kind of going down that sort of path where it's great that these pages are kind of taking things and kind of making it where, they're sharing other artists out there that are looking to kind of get up there. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, anytime we have someone share our music, it's a huge
Yeah.
benefit, and I'm always very grateful. Um, I always felt like we're kind of the sleeper band in the modern kind of indie goth post-punk scene because we've been doing this for a while and we played with so many bands. And a lot of times I'll have people just reach out to me directly to, say something nice about the music or, how they, how it makes them feel or how much they like us. Or I'll be out somewhere and be talking to someone and I'll let them know what I'm doing. Like, oh yeah, you guys are fantastic, but we're not like that type of band that's constantly being shared or like little clips going viral or being whatever. So, I think it's more of a like slow roll a little bit.
Word of mouth.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but sometimes I think, more people may know about us than I realize, but it's just a very kind of quiet community. It's a more personal thing, which is cool because I mean, I want the music to be that way, you know. I want it to affect people the way I was like, a 13-year-old kid in the middle of you know, rural Maryland listening to these bands and they sounded like they came like from another planet or something. And it was so personal because there was no club to go to, there was no scene to be involved in. There was, it was just you and your emotional and mental connection to the songs and the music. And so,
Well, let's kind of dig into that. Let's kind of go back into the past and let's kind of talk about, if you're comfortable enough, where, growing up, you said you grew up in Maryland, and kind of where you met with music, and, how you started listening to bands and then eventually wanting to become a musician. What was your path? Like, what was your trail into doing that?
it was it was something that I did. I don't think like consciously decided this is what I'm going to go do. It was just something that I naturally started pursuing. And it's that classic case of like you hear this music, you see these bands, and it kind of like hits you like a lightning bolt,
Right.
and you're like, I
Yeah,
don't know what that is, but that's what I want to be a part of. And at the time, there were still, this would have been like pre-Clear Channel buying up all the independent radio stations around the country.
of course. Yeah.
So there was still a 99X in Washington, D.C.
Yep.
And, it was that old type of radio station where at night the signal would get weak. So it would like be cutting in and out. And I would still be like trying to tune in, out in like the mountains in rural Maryland, like trying to
And
hear this music. And you would get exposed to amazing stuff, because there were no playlists.
yeah.
There was no clear channel telling them like this is alternative, this is what you have to play.
Yep.
And I was exposed to a lot of amazing artists. And being close to Baltimore and DC, I was able to go to Georgetown and go into some of the punk stores, the alternative stores at the time, and see the posters of these bands, get like, some import CDs or some cassettes or whatever. And, the old like propaganda magazines
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And it was like this whole alien world, and I loved it. I was also like a little skate punk. So, me and my friends were reading Thrasher. We were watching all the VHS tapes, and hearing that great SoCal punk that was on it, you know, and being exposed to that. So we listened to a lot of that stuff and a lot of stuff like Dead Milkman and like, that sort of I don't know what you would call it. It's not really that's obviously not SoCal punk, but it's like that weirder kind of Americanized punk that's
Yeah.
like not hyper political,
Yeah.
but you know, so we listened to a lot of that.
Cool.
Uh, and then me and my friends, of course, were little skate punks. So we're like, what are we going to do? We're bored. All right, let's go get instruments.
Yeah.
And so we go get instruments and we start playing music. Um, then I went off to art school in Baltimore, and that's where I first experienced like a goth club,
Mm.
like what that was. I had no idea. Like I had the Gothic Rock Black Book and I had, I remember seeing Susie and Echo and the Bunnyman and Jesus and Mary Chain and all that stuff on 120 minutes.
Yeah.
But I had really had no concept that this was a scene
Right.
coming from somewhere that had happened. So I remember, working my way through college and, my friends at work were like, you need to come out with us on Thursday nights because I think you'll like, this music because they'd see me wearing my t-shirts and stuff for these bands. So it was called Club Orpheus in Baltimore. And I started going every Thursday night. It was amazing to me. The atmosphere, it was like everyone looked like Roz Williams or Eva O. I was the only person there when I first came in. I was the only person there with bleach blonde hair.
Oh,
Everyone had their hair dyed black. Um, and just the smoke and the completely pitch black club and the smell of clove cigarettes and this incredible artistic music
yeah.
it just grabbed me.
Yeah.
Um, so after I left school, I was like, what do I want to do? Well, Atlanta had what used to be called, well, it's still around. It's called WRAS 88.5,
Yeah.
which was the largest college radio station in the world. And if you got on regular rotation here, you would automatically chart on CMJ. It was huge.
Mhm.
So I was like, well, I'll go there.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that seems to be the place to go because it's like trying to survive in Baltimore. Baltimore was very rough at the time. And then DC is all like politicians and lawyers and stuff. So it's like, they had the cool stores and I could get the culture there, but I didn't think I was going to be able to make it there or try to make it there in the artistic way I wanted to. So came down here. It was a lot cheaper, a lot easier living. Um, and just started looking for bands. And it took me, I think I played in like two or three different bands before I met Barry, who's a drummer that I work with in entertainment. And we actually got kicked out of a band we were playing in during the recording sessions because the main songwriter was so mad that we were like, we're recording and we're just starting to sort of like ad lib and jam on these songs, just like, we're going to give you some stuff. Like you can use it, you don't have to use it, but we're going to, and he just was not having it. He was, now later on in life, I'm like, why would you not want that? Like that's where the magic happens when you really let go. And I know you wrote a song, but your musicians can really enhance that song. But anyway,
That's
we
right.
broke, yeah, we got kicked out and we left and we went and we got some drinks and we're like, all right, well, let's just do this ourselves. And we started doing ourselves. And that's how we met Gavin at Stick Figure. He was bringing bands like The Vanishing and The Prids and Lotto Ball, Phantom Limbs, Turn Pale, like all this great stuff, yeah, into Atlanta. And I was like, I need to know who this person is, because this is going to be my ticket. Like this is how I can find an avenue here. So I met Gavin and I gave him some recordings and I was like, yeah, you might like this. And he contacted me and said, I want to put out a 7 inch. And then that was the start of it. And then we got in regular rotation on 88.5. And we started the process from there and got signed to a label called Luminal after that, which is I think they went bankrupt after like 2 or 3 years. But they helped us with the recording of Gender, which ultimately ended up coming out on Stick Figure and a label in New York, Duchess Archive, which put out some stuff by 16s. Um, I believe they put out some stuff with Jesse Evans from The Vanishing.
Hmm.
I remember. But anyway, they did the vinyl version. Stick Figure did the CD version. Um, And then from there, we started working with Robert DeSaro, who ran DeSaro Records. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Mhm.
DeSaro, but
For sure.
which was very, very strange because that was like the height of Witch House, and they were very embedded in that. And we did not like, we were just this like indie band from at the time I was in Athens because I moved to Athens after Atlanta because it has a more Atlanta just sorry, I'm like
No, I know
going
what you mean. Yeah,
ways.
go ahead.
But Atlanta's very it's just culturally different than Athens, right? It's
Of course.
and Athens has a legacy of more open-minded. This is me saying it. I'm sure
You're
people
good. You're okay. Yeah.
like open-minded, like artistic, interesting bands that were extremely successful.
Of course.
Like Atlanta's industry and Athens is artistry that turns into industry
Yes.
in my mind, you
Of
know.
course.
And so I decided it would be better to go out there after we got our first record deal because it just was cheaper to live and the community was just embraced us more
Yeah.
than when we were in Atlanta. Um, so yeah, we were just this like indie rock band from Athens, and we were working with Robert DeSaro and this like whole witch house scene. So we started playing with like White Ring, and I always forget, their names are also like. I think we played with Rituals once. We were on this witch house festival in San Francisco. It was just very different for us, and here we are, this kind of post-punk indie gothy band, and it was fantastic. But that was it. And once I had that taste of it, I just really couldn't stop. I mean, I love creating music. So yeah, that was kind of it to get to the point where I'm at now, where we're just like continuing to push this stuff out and seeing where it goes.
That's awesome. And so I'm gonna kind of try to fill in a bit gaps with some questions. So did you
Sure.
start okay, let's do what were some of the artists that you're listening to like growing up? Because I know it kind of shifts where it's did you listen to, mom and dad's kind of music, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, the radio, and then kind of found your own space with, the Doors, Led Zeppelin, you said was some of your influences. Was that parents
Yeah.
or was it from radio?
I mean, that's the early stuff.
Yeah.
Like, but I was really lucky because my parents had pretty cool taste in music.
Yeah.
So I remember listening to a lot of Blood, Sweat, and Tears, a lot of The Doors. Um, I'm trying to think of some other stuff that we listened to a lot when I was a kid, like when they were really young, because I had me and my sister when they were really young. Those are two that like really stuck out to me. Oh, Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, you know, who is it? Who does Anagata Davida? I should
Oh,
know that.
Iron
Iron
Butterfly.
Butterfly.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, Iron
yeah,
Butterfly.
Iron Butterfly.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yep, yeah. So Iron Butterfly, like stuff like that. So it was that sort of like darker, kind of heavier,
Oh, yeah.
stuff. Um, I never really like when I was young, I obviously was exposed to pop music, but I know this sounds like like not true, but the earliest like pop music that really hit me would have been People by Depeche Mode.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, Self-Control by Laura Branigan,
Yeah.
like Man Eater by Hall and Oates. Like these are things that I remember, these kind of darker, like, more 80s like things. Tears for Fears,
Yep.
like that sort of stuff really kind of grabbed me from pop radio. But honestly, oh, and some Genesis, stuff like that. But once I kind of got to that age where you start consuming music as like buying music, consuming music, I had already gotten into like I had my little skate punk friends, and we were listening to like the Dead Kennedys and the Dead Milkmen and Sex Pistols and Public Image Limited and Circle Jerks,
Oh,
Descendants, like all that stuff. And that really hit me from a lyrical standpoint.
mhm.
I love the sound of the guitars. I love that like early 80s kind of death rock punk guitar, that atonal like Rick Agnew thing, you know. Um, so I mean that just really grabbed me. And that's when I started like buying music. So luckily I didn't really have a phase of like buying stuff that you would then be like, oh, I was such a dumb little kid. Like I was buying this,
Yeah.
I just kind of skipped over that and then
Yeah.
was like, no, this is sort of what I want to be into. And then of course from that, it's like you go to 120 minutes, you go to post punk, and it was like the minute. I heard, well, I did hear The Cure for the first time on pop radio,
Yeah.
which would have been Love Song. So I
Okay.
heard that and I thought, what is this? This is really cool. This is very evocative and different, you know, at the time than anything else you were hearing on the radio. But the minute like Staircase of Mystery by Susie and the Banshees, the minute I heard that, the first Jesus and Mary Chain album,
Ooh,
um,
yeah.
Public Image Limited, you know, just about everything that they did. Um, what else? Echo and the Bunnymen's Killing Moon. Like these are the things that then suddenly, after this sort of moving out of skate punk into, I guess what you would say, that kind of goth, new wave, post-punk thing. Once I heard that stuff, I was just in. So I still love a lot of that early punk stuff. Um, but like my heart and soul just went into like, well, I can remember the buying Substance by Joy Division and putting that in and just hearing 350-125 go to, and I was like, what is this? And hearing that cassette go from that like punk, which is what I started with,
Yeah.
all the way to then you get to like Love Will Tear Us Apart and Atmosphere, and seeing a band do that arc. And I was like, that's the same arc that I feel like I've been through. And like for my love of music, I was like, this is really cool. And
Yeah.
so that's sort of what got me into that. And then I had some older friends, like my sister's older friends would give me stuff. I had a cassette that had Meat is Murder by the Smiths on one side and Songs to Learn and Sing by Echo and the Bunnymen on the other side. Then I had another one that had I think it was oh, what is it? The the Susan and Banshees album with Ornaments of Gold on it. Um, I shouldn't know the name of that, but anyway, that record, and then weirdly, Diesel and Dust by Midnight Oil on the other side. And they had no markings, like no labels, nothing. I just had these cassettes. And so checking those
Yeah.
out,
Peep show.
Peep Show, thank you.
There you go. Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So hearing that with no label, no band name, no nothing, just hearing that, it was like, what is this music? And I had no idea. I had no context. It was great to not have to hear people's opinions of Morrissey
Yeah.
or have to
Oh, yeah.
see a ton of people trying to emulate Susie.
Yeah.
Um, be, before experiencing that music and experiencing it with no name attached to it, no band name, no is just blank cassette with these albums on each side to the point where like even the last song on each one would just get cut off. You know, like that.
Oh,
That's
oh yeah.
and I was like, what is this stuff? Like this is amazing.
Hmm.
Um, and so then once I got to Baltimore, you know, and DC, you start going to the city more and you start going, oh, this is what it is. It's this whole scene.
Yep.
Like, even though I was into like, you know, Bad Brains and some of the DC hardcore stuff, I was so young at that point, I didn't go to DC. I wasn't going to go like hang out with like the punks in Georgetown, you know,
Yeah,
at
yeah.
like a super young age. Um, so I was exposed to it, but then as I got old enough to where I would have been doing that, I was like on to this other
Yeah.
thing, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was that. And then beyond that, the next thing that really hit me was when I got in college, uh, I was again given a tape. This one was no, it wasn't labeled, I don't think, but on one side it had Bark Psychosis's album Hex, and then I Could Live in Hope by Low on the other side.
Oh
And
wow.
when I heard that, I was like, this is like the next transition
Yeah.
out of all that goth stuff that I loved. And Hex is still my favorite album of all time. I mean, that album is immaculate. Um, and then I had a roommate who was really into Warp Records.
Hmm.
It
Oh,
was exposing me to like Alltecker and Global Goon and of course Aphex Twin and Square Pusher and all this stuff. And I got a real appreciation for that side of electronic music, you know. And so that's the next stuff that really kind of sort of blew up for me where I was like, this is a really, really cool scene. And at the same time, I'm going out to shows at that point, seeing like Thrill Kill Cult and
yeah.
KMFDM and Lords of Acid like play in these like little clubs in Baltimore and stuff. And there was a very robust indie goth scene at the time. So like The Wake and Sunshine Blind, Corpus Delicti, Faith in the Muse, all these bands would come around and being able to see them as well. It's just this really rich musical time. And then when I came to Atlanta, it was strange because there was a scene here, but like it didn't have the robustness that I remember. There
Hmm.
were like a few people, and Gavin was one of them, but he's also from Pennsylvania, you know. But Gavin was one of them, and there's a few people that I connected with that knew all of this stuff like deeply. You know, it wasn't just surface. Like there was a goth night here, you know, there was a really big 80s night here. There were punk shows, you know, but it was different,
Yeah.
you know. And
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, and I think that's why eventually I went out to Athens for a couple years because there you have like the Plague and the B-52s and
Mhm.
R.E.M. and Love Tractor and Pylon and all of these bands that kind of went from there to New York and back. And they made that connection. Where in Atlanta, I just wasn't feeling that connection. So,
No, of course, of course. And what's your thoughts about where the scene is going now? Do you feel like it's is it peaking? You feel like it's like you think it's kind of on its way up, kind of like how it used to be?
um, well, I don't know.
Okay.
I go to Cruel World every year,
Yeah.
and so that really gives me hope because you
Yeah,
see a
yeah.
lot of younger bands play there. But to be perfectly honest with you, like I kind of wish it would die.
Right.
Like I do. I think it needs to like what's happening now, I think in popular what people are calling goth culture online is like a stepchild of the original culture.
Of course. Yeah.
And when I talk to my friends a lot about the scene, and I'll say it's kind of like when I hear a lot of these younger bands that are trying to recreate 17 seconds note for note, you know, they're saying, you know, their influences are, you know, The Cure and you know, Susie and the Banshees, and it's all the same stuff. And then when they produce music, it's very apparent that they were filtering themselves through what they heard. I look at that like as if those bands were listening to the Glenn Miller Orchestra and
Mhm.
being like, that 40s pops. That's some great music, you know. I want to be just like that big band music, you know. Um, because and funny enough, talking about Peep Show when they did sort of go back to that sort of like some of those textures, but those original post-punk bands and goth bands were so unique and they created a scene,
Yeah.
you know, everything that was coming out of Leeds, everything that was coming out of the Batcave, you know, even if you look at Christian Death in America and 45 Grave, their spin on it coming out of the California punk scene and making it darker, you know, and then like Tex and the Horseheads and some of the and Gun Club and some of the cowpoke stuff or cowpunk stuff.
Yeah.
Um, it was so unique, but they all had a common thread. And now I kind of feel like people have taken that and it's become, for lack of a better term, it's just bland. Like it's post-punk in a box.
Like it's a cookie cutter.
Yeah, it's cookie cutter. A lot of, and it's not to like talk down to a lot of the, you know, younger bands who are part of the scene, but I kind of wish that they would be more experimental like the original bands were and realize those bands created a sound. They didn't mimic a sound,
Yeah, of course.
you know.
Yeah.
But we also live in the world of algorithms.
Hmm.
And if you want to get your stuff played, you've got to hit that algorithm. So
Yeah.
if you like this, you'll also like this. And that to me is inherently anti post-punk, really inherently anti-goth. It was all supposed to be counter to everything. You
Yeah.
know, it's counter to popular culture, it's counter to malaise and cookie cutter intentions. It was all about ripping up everything that came before you and doing it over. Um, so that's why I say I kind of wish it would
Oh, it's
die
okay. Yeah.
because I want people coming up in the scene now to have their own thing.
Of course.
You know, I really want them to have their own thing. I don't want them listening to basically their grandparents' culture. Like, you know, those bands are phenomenal. They will never go away, but I wish that in the modern scene it would morph into something different. And I feel like when Witch House was happening, it was starting to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I think there was another thing that happened that I felt like, oh, goth is moving in a really, I guess it was like the GSL Records period with
Hmm.
like Turn Pale and The Vanishing, Antioch Arrow, like all that stuff where they were taking some of those influences and morphing it into something else. Um, there was that whole like minimal synth thing that happened with 16s and some of those other, all their names escape me now, but some of those other bands that really like brought the analog synthesizers back into fashion and been really aggressive, like almost destroying EBM type, textures and songs and got really into that like cold wave sound. And so I don't know, that was really interesting. But I think it's healthy from a like popularity standpoint for sure. Like uh, the fashion side of it really took off, probably more so than the music side of it. But you've got things like Cruel World, you've got all the big festivals in the UK and in Europe. You've got a few smaller but just as good festivals popping up
Yeah.
in America. Um, when there are events, they are pretty packed again, which is nice. The nights in Atlanta are getting packed again. There was a time when it was kind of weeded out. Um, so I think it's healthy from a participation standpoint. I just want to see it grow,
Yeah, of course.
you know.
Naturally. I think what we need to see, I mean, it's again, it's kind of a weird situation that we're kind of in because I think COVID kind of had a big impact where we were so stuck in where we were trying to kind of figure things out. And then when we were like, okay, everybody can get out now, then everybody's starting to kind of figure out where they are in the world and where they can go. And then there's more festivals now where, you know, a lot of people, everybody that I talk to says it's hard to tour because of the money strain. So festivals are where it's at
Yeah.
because you get certain acts. I've talked to, and they're like, when we play festivals, it's great because a lot of people are willing to travel to go to these big festivals, especially if it's all goth, all post punk, all industrial, this, that, and the other. And so I see where I think we're kind of at a learning point, and I really hope we do find instead of people kind of cookie cut like doing a cookie cutter thing that they're kind of they I hope they because I see where you're coming from where it's like grab what life experience, which I think that's what makes you stand out is because you've taken everything that you were raised on and I hear it a lot in your music where it can get psychedelic, you know,
Mhm.
the Doors or even with Iron Butterfly there's moments where you're blending psychedelic with shoegaze and put like you knew you found it and you do it beautifully, and I can totally see where you're going. Hey, let's all just break the mold, let's burn it down, start over again, and just see where we can create something brand new. You know what I mean? And that's why I think is great for people who listen to your music because it feels brand new to me. So,
That's awesome. No, I'm glad. I mean, I work really hard for that because it
mhm,
comes from such a like isolated place. We when I came down here to really start making music in earnest, it there wasn't a huge scene. I just had to basically find people that I could relate to that I thought were good musicians and say, let's create this thing. There was not at the time a really robust uh, underground modern goth scene happening. And there wasn't analytics to tell you what you should do
right?
to get popular or to
Yeah.
have more people listen to you. Um, but then there's also the art school thing too, where it's like I got so you I think it got embedded in me to stand up for yourself and what's inside of you and let that out and then allow it to be and allow people to either tear it apart or really appreciate it. Because when you're in fine art school, it's like you'll spend weeks on paintings and then you hang them on the wall and the class just destroys them. And they're like, that's terrible, you're garbage,
Oh, yeah.
and you have to take all that in and you have to learn what to listen to, what to absorb and go, actually, they're right. I do need to get better at this, or I didn't succeed at that. And then also what to say, like, I don't care what you think. Like, your opinion is your opinion, but I stand behind my creation. Um, and so I think that's where when I'm approaching music and working on it, I'm never happy until when I hear it back, I almost don't recognize myself in it,
Yeah.
because I've been so into it that when it comes back to me, it's transformed somehow coming out of me and into the computer or whatever we're recording on at the time. And then working with other musicians helps that too, because they'll take your idea and they'll contribute to that and help you, and a good producer will do the same and they'll contribute to helping you pull out something that you might not have known was there. And so, um, hopefully, well, yeah, hopefully that it's paying off and it does sound like something with references, but unique and brand new.
Course. No, and that's what it is because nobody can really just go Shazam. This is brand new. No, nobody's ever, you know what I mean? It's hard because there's so much art out there and there's so much music out there that it's hard. Where a lot of people are kind of taking samples or this, that, and the other. They're borrowing from it, so it's hard. But if you can take influences and filter it and make it brand new and make it amazing and beautiful, then that's where it's at. And I
Yeah.
want to get on subject of going to art school is that at some point people in their life they need to go through that moment where people are going to because you need that moment where you create something and you need people to kind of go, well, you can, you know what I mean? You need that criticism instead of thinking everything I'm putting out is amazing because we live
Right.
in that weird world where if someone goes, you know what, you this is great, but you could also, and they go, well, now you're just being mean and bull. You need to go through that critical moment where sometimes you need it broken down to kind of fix it, if that makes sense.
It absolutely
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think there was this, like social media is to me such a toxic thing.
It's
I
so
understand
weird.
that
Yeah.
people, they say there's benefits in it, but I think ultimately history is proving it's a horrible, horrible thing.
Yeah.
There was that period of time, I think, where there was that bubble of like, I will not accept any criticism.
Yeah.
So if someone says, post something about my art or my whatever I did,
Yes.
and I don't like it, I'll just say you're a hater, and now I'm going to block you, and I never have to listen to you again.
Yes.
And that doesn't help you grow. That doesn't get
No,
you anywhere, and it also doesn't teach you inner strength to, in my opinion, be a stronger creator.
of course.
You know,
Yeah.
um, and I think when you put yourself in that echo chamber of everyone telling you everything you do is fantastic and everything you do is great, you're never going to grow as an artist and you're never going to challenge yourself to find out who you really are. I mean, I Robert Smith, you can look at the Cure's career because so many people look at them as a big influence. Look at those albums. That was a person growing,
Growing. Yeah.
and changing. They didn't just say, I'm going to make this sound now.
Yep.
But then you have a lot of bands now who listen to like the album 17 Seconds or Disintegration. They go, I'm going to make that sound. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, they didn't decide to make that sound until it was made. And
Yes.
you should grow in your musical
Your
career
way. Yeah.
and figure out where you're going to be.
Yeah.
Like, I would never think that I would be making the music I'm making now when I was younger. I would have thought it would have been stuff I like the stuff I listened to,
Of course.
exactly like that.
Yeah.
Um, I'm glad that it's the way that it is because it's scary in a way because it's so on its own and unique. I don't feel like we fit in with any of the current like little micro trends going on
Yeah.
in subculture or whatever. So there's a little bit of scariness there, but I'm also proud of it being wholly unique. And I hope when people approach it, they can go, wow, this is different, this is unique, and appreciate it for that instead of this is different. It's not like what I'm used to. I need to back away from this and go to my familiar place.
Right. And
So
I think there's that place where nostalgia, and I've talked about this, where people like to go to nostalgia to hide away from what makes them uncomfortable now.
yeah,
People like doing that. And I think there needs to be a moment where we break that mold and we go, no, let's get past this darkness. Let's get past all this and find where we are on the other side of this. Again, it has a lot to do with me and anxiety, where it's like, this scares me. This freaks me out. This makes me uncomfortable. I'm not going to do this. And this is kind of why I've been breaking out of the podcast because, again, there's times where I find comfort in don't talk to anybody, don't put your stuff out there, don't even, try and talk with other people and then post online because everybody's going to pick it apart. But it's go, no, there's growth in this. There's growth in it. Let's become a bigger, better person in this. And I think a lot of times, again, in the internet, people want to find comfort in, either blocking or ignoring people. But on the other side, you find out who you really are.
Yeah, absolutely. I have the same thing. There's this constant anxiety, like as the front person in a band, it's really your job to go out there and sell it. And this goes back to that whole extroverted thing. That anxiety will often stop me from doing anything, and it's uncomfortable. And with what we're doing sounding so unique, I will, you can't help but sometimes put it in comparison to the other things that are popular. You're like, I want to be on that stage, or I want to be at that level. What are they doing? And how how did they get there? And it's very, very easy to go, okay, I will mimic that.
Right.
It's very hard to go, okay, I see what that is. That is a challenge. I have to be as good as that or better with what I do. And that's where you get like it's very anxiety ridden, and a lot of times we'll put new music out and I'm like, I don't know, people might criticize this. It might sound weird to them. I play very atonally. I do not believe anyone should still be playing blues chords or traditional rock, you know, fingering on their guitar or whatever anymore. Like it just seems to me so regressive. And it's not that, you don't do that, but I like these different textures, these different sounds, these different styles of playing, my own natural weird ear and how I hear things half a step off half the time, which drives our producer crazy because he has a very trained ear and he'll be like, why are you playing that note? You just need to move one fret. And I'm like, but that's not that sounds right. Like I
Sounds good
want
to
to,
me. Right.
yeah, it's like this sounds better to me. But it can be very scary because a lot of people are going to hear that. Like I was just watching a demo version of State of the Nation by New Order.
Yeah.
It was on YouTube, and I love Bernard's horrible guitar playing,
Yeah.
right? Like it's so great. And when they just played Cruel World, and honestly, it was a horrible performance, really, really
Uh,
bad. But his guitar was so aggressively sloppy and angsty, and I loved it. And I was like, that's Bernard's guitar. Like I love that sound, that Joy Division, like angsty, So in this version of State of a Nation, he's playing guitar solos, and I'm reading the comments, and people are like, I guess someone forgot to give him a tuner. Why is he playing all the wrong notes? Some people will say like it's supposed to sound like that, but I'm like, yeah, that's what I love about some of that early New Order stuff. Bernard will sing off key. The guitar will be slightly off key or out of tune, and it sounds incredible to me. And so, but I know that for most people, they'll experience that and I'll be like, oh, like our album Gender is so weird to listen to for some people, and some of the stuff on horror is, and my singing will sometimes be so like my home demo singing will often always be so off key, or so strained and emotional or whatever. But I love that sound, but yeah, there's a lot of anxiety and it can be very easy to be scared of that and then run towards something comfortable.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Is there anything you're listening to now that you didn't listen to before that you feel like is giving you a little bit of more personal growth? Like for me, example, listen to a lot of Tom Waits lately. I feel
Yeah.
like I somehow it clicked, and because I've been doing this music challenge where I'll listen to different bands and da da da. So I started listening to a lot of Tom Waits, and it somehow has just clicked. And I go, "Wow, I've never noticed this before." Is there anything that you're listening to now that, even if it's old or new, anything that's clicked, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're growing with it and kind of adding your own you're taking the influences and kind of adding it to a new album.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff, old and new, that I started listening to over the past couple of years, really finding years ago, but exploring the Associates,
Mm-hmm.
Billy McKenzie, the Blue Nile has become a huge influence to me. Um, Choir Boy is one of the only like modern bands that I absolutely love. Like I just everything that they do is, incredible to me. Um, Kite is fantastic. I absolutely love kite. That's like the newest thing where I'm like, this is I want to be this, you know. I not that will ever will, but it's like this is really moving me. And then other than that, I started getting into a lot of like years ago when when I had finished gender and started moving on toward like exploring new sounds. I started getting into a lot of this like I don't know what you would call it. It was like this indie R&B stuff, like Active Child and How to Dress Well, where yeah, it was that kind of lo-fi sort of it's got some modern digital textures, but there's also this lo-fi scuzziness to it. And that stuff really spoke to me. Um, Geneva Jacuzzi, when I got into Geneva Jacuzzi, that was great. I'm trying to think who else, like, I mean, that's kind of it. That's pretty robust. Um, Nothing else that I'm really old that I'm exploring right now because I desperately want to find the new sound,
Yeah.
you know, and Kite's the closest thing. And even with Kite, it reminds me a bit of the knife, you
Yeah.
know.
Yes.
So it's still fantastic, but I'm like I'm just looking for like where's this new thing that's going to hit me
Chasing the
that
dragon. Yeah. The music.
yeah,
Yeah. You're trying to find that new thing where it goes, oh, I love this. And then you become obsessed with it. And I love that feeling.
yeah. And so that's sort of where I'm at right now while sort of pursuing, you know, finishing our songs and writing new stuff. And maybe that will open a door to like the new thing, you know.
Of course.
Don't-
Let's talk about going live, playing live, and everything like that. What was your first experience playing live? Was it one of your garage bands, or was it, what was your first experience playing live in front of people?
The very, very first experience
Yeah,
playing
if you can,
live,
yeah, or one
I
you
mean,
remember at least, whatever.
I could take it all the way back to like playing music in, middle school and like middle school band and stuff. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, you could do like even just like, I mean, we've all done the whole band thing. I mean,
yeah, but that's helpful, right? Like that
right,
puts
of
you,
course,
yeah,
definitely. So,
because you screw up, right?
yeah,
Like you're a little kid and you screw up and you're playing the wrong notes, and all these people are looking at you, and that's super embarrassing as a kid,
the
right?
teacher would,
So,
oh, never.
so that kind of helps you a little bit. But yeah, playing live, God, I mean, early on, when I got down here and played with some local bands, I'm trying to think like the first thing I can truly remember is opening for Zymox in this goth band that Barry and I were in
Yeah.
down here where we met. And
Mhm.
that was at the old Masquerade in Heaven. So very intimidating because you're opening for like Zymox. Those early Zymox albums are like phenomenal to me. And you have a really nice sized crowd. And it's like being on stage is, you know, very intimidating at that point. And I remember I did hit one horrible bum note at the end of a song during that show. But then after that band, like we played a few times there, and then it was like warehouse parties, very, very small club shows. Um, we played the Drop Dead Festival a couple years up in New York, and those were huge at the Knitting Factory. Those were fantastic. But yeah, that first like real rock band experience, I had a kind of good one. I was lucky, but it was nerve-wracking because you like not being the main songwriter, one, it's a little bit foreign to me because I'm playing someone else's music, but then also just going, no matter how much you rehearse, you're just like, I know my fingers are going to do something wrong. Like I'm going to, and so again, that anxiety kind of kicks in or whatever. But once I started playing in entertainment full time and really honing in on that, just our natural energy on stage can be very intense, um, very powerful, apparently, from what people tell me when they see us. And it feels very natural. But that's just because it's me. It's like stuff that I've written with the band. So it feels like it's just a part of me coming out as an exhibition for everyone watching, I've never been, again, being extroverted, I've never been the person that's been able to come out and be like, hey, what's up, everybody? And this song's called whatever. And, I usually don't even tell people the name of our band when we play. We just go out there and do it and then
Do it.
leave. Yeah. So
Amazing. Who are some of your favorite artists that you open for or toured with or worked with? Any ones that stand out particularly?
Yeah, we've been really lucky. But the biggest one was when got the opportunity to open for Modern English on a couple tours. And Modern English are such a sneaky band because they're so good. But I felt a kinship to them because if you listen to those early recordings, they did not care. Not that they didn't care about
Oh,
the
of course.
songs, but they were not trying to fit in
Yep.
with anything. I mean, it was just wholly unique artistic music, this true post-punk artsy strangeness. And it came from a very unique place. And watching them do that intensely confidently night after night, because the first tour we did, they just played Mesh and Lace. And then, of course, I met with you at the end, you know. But watching them do that night after night and how powerful it is and how professional they are. I learned so much just by being around those guys and having the opportunity to do it a couple times. It was just it was really, really enlightening. And it also gave me a lot of confidence because before we did that, entertainment was not active for close to 3 years. We had done a second album, and then the label that was going to put it out went under, and the album never came out. And I felt pretty like I'm tired, you know, like I can't keep pushing. And there's other things in life I've got to get to, you know, I can't constantly push for this. Um, and so then we got the opportunity to do the Modern English tour, and I called Barry and I was like, well, we've got to put a band together because the original, gender band was no longer, it was just me and Barry. So we put a band together and we did it, and it just opened the world for me. And then the next thing that happened was, um, I got a message on Instagram. This was like right before COVID. We had just done our second tour with Modern English, and I got a message on Instagram from a friend in LA, and she's like, "Hey, my friend is sharing your music. It's pretty cool." And I was like, "Oh, who your friend? Like, who's your friend?" She's like, "Oh, my friend Andrew." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And she's like, "Yeah, he's from Drab Majesty."
Yeah.
I was like, oh. And so he started like he heard us in LA in a bar apparently and was like, what is this? And found it. And she's like, that's my friend. I've known him for 15 years. They live in Atlanta. And so, Drab Majesty at the time were the biggest like indie goth band. And they were going on tour, and I got in touch with Andrew, and we just hung out with them till like 4 in the morning. And they were like, we've been listening to your album nonstop in the bus, like through this whole tour. And I was like, this is weird. And that's what I mean by we are like this, it's like this hidden secret
Yeah.
that I don't realize people are exposed to it. And then you find out something like that. And and in my mind, I said, okay, well, if Drab Majesty likes us, like I need to push this further because I had felt at the time like we're not going to take off. We had opened for tons of great bands. We had lots of labels who would put out little things by us here and there, but it was all very art house. It was all very niche. It didn't take off. It didn't get huge. I saw, you know, over and over again this no, there was that whole like Blank Dogs, like I forget their label that Blank Dogs ran. But there was like Blank Dogs happening, there was Sacred Bones happening, a little bit of Dark Entries label coming into it, Deus was popping off, and we just were not. So I had gotten to the point where I felt like it's just not going to happen for us, which happens to bands all the time.
It, Troubleman Records, or is it In the Red Records?
I think it was Troubleman. Yeah, it was Troubleman. Yeah, I believe. Yeah, so there was that whole thing, and they were, those bands were popping up, and they had the same influences that we did, and they had that same kind of lo-fi sound, but we just were not getting any of that attention. So I had kind of just said, I still want to do this, but I don't know the right way to make it happen, and the band is depending on me to make it happen, and I have my own issues. Like I don't know if I can push enough to do it. So then when, we got off the second Modern English tour, and then when Drive Majesty called, I was like, maybe I need to push this. And then like sure enough, our next show, we were supposed to be opening for Zymox in Atlanta the night everything shut down for COVID. And then so the minute I get this idea of like, okay, let's do this, like let's push this, COVID happens. And so I just went right back to finishing recordings. That's where I finished a lot of the stuff for horror.
Yeah.
And then working with some friends on remixes and stuff just to get things out there. We've been very, very lucky. uh, I say lucky, but I guess blessed or fortunate to have a lot of people who are in that scene really befriend us and like, support us and stuff. So um that's sort of what I leaned into during COVID then was like, let me reach out to some friends and see if I can't get some remixes and people sort of giving us the thumbs up, like, hey, you should like this. So
No, that's awesome.
yeah, but yeah, Modern English, they were the one band I'd say out of all of them that I was just like, this is incredible. Learning so much from these guys. So
Well, I was looking through your Instagram. I've talked with Shannon from Actors, incredible, great musician, great band from Actors. Um, and then you you opened with Gene Loves Jezebel, the J version.
yes,
What
yes.
what's your experience with that? As honest as you want.
Yes. So, well, I'm going to say first off,
Because I opened for Michael, but go
you did.
ahead.
Okay. Okay. So maybe you share this. But I love Gene Loves Jezebel.
Of course, me too. Yeah.
Absolutely love them.
Love
Even,
them.
even all the way up through like Kiss of Life. I love that record. And then even like Josephina coming after that, I forget the name of the record. And yeah, he gets a little more traditional American blues, rocky, whatever. But man, you go those early singles like Shaving My Neck. When I first heard Shaving My Neck, it like again, it hit me like, what is this? Like, I need to be a part of this. So absolutely love them. That tour was, I think, supposed to be an anniversary tour for the band. Half the band quit right before they got to Atlanta. It was just Jay and Bugs and a computer.
Yeah.
And I've seen Gene Loves Jezebel now, I think 3 or 4 times. Only one time, and it's always been Jay's. Only one time have I seen them, and I was like, wow, that was really, really good. And I love those songs. It's like it
Oh,
hurts me to even say it, but
I know.
it's just like, I mean, if I had paid money to go see the 40th anniversary Gene Loves Jezebel tour, and that's what I got, I would have been like, you need to give me my money back. Like, this is unacceptable in every way. Because that glammy, dark, gothy sound is so evocative. And then when you see it live, and Jay also does this thing where he like ad libs the songs live, and it drives me nuts because I want to hear him sing it in the
Just like the
same.
record, please. Yeah.
Yeah, like don't sing the lyrics in a different cadence. Don't leave any out. Don't whatever. So you have that awesome sound, and then you just see a computer, a really literally a laptop, and then two guys on stage. It just is. I would almost rather not see it. But so what was your experience like opening
Okay.
for Malta?
I did. It was me, I think another band. It was Gene Loves Jezebel, Michael, and Bow Wow Wow. And Bow
Okay.
Wow Wow with a different singer. They kind of go through these different singers.
Yeah.
With Michael, the band was Bow Wow Wow. It was the band Bow Wow Wow, and then the same musicians did Bow. So you get what I'm saying. So, anyways, he after the show, after his performance, it was in between setup. Uh, I went outside and was kind of hanging out with him. He was smoking a cigarette, having a drink, and so we're just shooting the shit, talking music or whatever. And he's like, "Oh, what's a great bar out here in St. Louis?" I'm like, "Well, we're not drinkers, we're not bar hoppers or whatever. We like our venues and we like to know where the music's at. That's us."
Yeah.
He called us the worst locals ever because we didn't know where the good bar was. So,
My God.
oh yeah, he was something else. But
Yeah.
I had a friend who she has her own project out in I think it was Minnesota, and she opened for Michael Gene Loves Jezebel, and I was like, okay. Well, I'm like, well, let me know how that goes. And she's like, yeah, he's a bit of a prima donna. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Those moments, and it's like it's sad because I love him, but it's just like, come on, guys, like just I don't know. You know what I mean?
It's it, when I talk about producers being very important part of a band and collaborators and songwriters, I don't diminish anything that they brought to the table because their personalities made those incredible songs. But I have to question how much of it was put together by a producer once they got in past like Promise and gosh, I'm so terrible with album names today. The first and second album, and then they got into the more kind of like 80s glam metal sound, you know. I know that they had some new people come into the band that helped with that a little bit, but yeah, after seeing them live, I'm like, God, how much did a producer have to work with you just to get the right vocal takes?
No,
You
yep.
know? And they've got great voices,
Huh.
but just totally off the wall. And they are both, I guess, apparently still in party mode at their age because Jay
They
was
are.
like very similar. And I'm like, you've got to get out of this rock and roll headspace. Like it's not that time anymore. Yeah, it's like you just played like a small venue on a Wednesday night in this city. Like there's no big party after this. We're all going home, like that's,
That's how it is. It's you can take it or leave it. If you find usually in St. Louis, if there's a good show, sometimes the local goth club will kind of throw together an after party.
yeah,
We've had that with a few St. Louis shows, and they've been kind of generating. We have something called Midwest Punk and Metal. They'll kind of throw together some after parties and stuff like that. But at the time, it was like no, like after this, it's like we're gonna go home, get to sleep, whether we got to get up and go to work the next day or just whatever. It's like, yeah, we're not in party mode anymore.
yeah.
We were musicians for the musicianship, for the art, for the love of it. We're not looking for a party and a good time. I mean, there was that time where it was like, yeah, let's enjoy ourselves. We had a great show. Let's embrace the night. But now it's like, dude, just go home, go to bed, watch a movie.
I mean, the money isn't there for sure.
No, not anymore.
The drugs are a million times worse
Oh, you
than,
die from that.
so yeah, so you can't rely on that. And yeah, it's just not there. It's not happening that way anymore. I feel like if you choose this, it's like I said earlier, it's like in America, especially, you're like a contract worker when you show up to that gig, you are putting in the work and it can still be really fun, but there's no limo picking you up afterward. There's no like bus driving you to some crazy hotel party. You're just like going home and going to work there tomorrow.
Right. So, oh yeah, and even just tour life, it's like, when you're touring around small, little tour bus where it's, just a passenger van or whatever you want to call it, you're just making sure you get enough sleep, making sure you got enough to eat, make sure you have enough money for gas and stuff like that. So it's like, why push yourself where money's a limit, time's a limit, gas is, it's just like, just embrace the road and just enjoy being a musician.
I mean, honestly, that's some of the most fun time is just those crazy tired drives
Yeah.
where you're going from one city to the next. You maybe had a good show, you maybe had a bad show. You only have your bandmates, and you're getting to that hallucinatory like period of just
Yeah.
yeah, where you're just joking and just making up the dumbest things. So many inside jokes have already happened. You're listening to good music. It's like, whatever o'clock, at night, just driving, hoping your van makes it and doesn't break down, you know, sleeping in rest stops. Um, if you're lucky, you might get like a hotel or a motel in some town that you stay in, meeting all sorts of cool people. Every city you just meet like the best people. That's really the fun.
I
Yeah.
like it. Yeah.
I would hate to miss all of that because you're like too hungover or strung out to like,
Right.
to make it. Plus, you have no one lugging your gear around. So another reason you have to be like on top of your game. You don't
Yeah.
have roadies like putting your gear up for you and tuning everything for you and like breaking it all down. It's like I think that's the worst part about playing live, at this level is when you have this great show and you get done and you're like, yeah, awesome. And people want to talk to you and stuff. And you're like, hold on. And then you're like, yeah, you're like, let me take all these cables apart and let me, and then I got to help our drummer like load out because he's got all this gear and like you're unscrewing, whatever, like widgets and stuff and taking symbols off and it's like it's just so again it's like this night and day thing where you're back to contractor work, like you just were this hero in a way, like you're transcending and then you're like, oh, hold on, let me, unplug all my gear and pack it all safely away before I can come out and even think about having a party with you.
Right. Oh my gosh, I was looking through some old pictures, and it was just funny because there's certain shows where there'll be pictures of me setting everything up, performing, and then tearing everything down.
Yeah,
And it's like, okay, hey everybody, what like you can then socialize and
I
say hey
know.
everybody, and maybe sell some merch or whatever. Oh my God. And there's fun in that. Like that's what I like about doing this podcast. It's just like talking with people and just sharing those memories where just on the road and talking about doing shows. And it's those little things that matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it really is. And again, going back to touring with Modern English, that very first tour with them, like watching them do that, like they did not have a road crew,
Yeah.
watching them do their own. It's like this is a band that has one of the most famous songs of all time,
Oh,
and one of the originators of this scene that we are a part of. And they've got legacy, they've got the experience, they've, put all the work in, and watching them do it, I was like, okay, well, this is like it just changes your mind when you think about like they're doing it too. Like, and they're at that level. And of course, now, they put the work in, they've toured enough and sort of had their comeback where now they're on I think they're coming here this week with Simple Minds and Soft Cell and playing, a big amphitheater, but seeing them come back and doing that tour with them and watching these people who are like heroes do the same thing you are, it did, at least change my mind about it a little bit. It didn't seem as weird when I was having to do it, like, but yeah, those can be the really fun times though, like just working through all of that. That's kind of cool.
oh, it's great. Oh my gosh, this has been a great I'm like usually I have like a bunch of questions set up, but I think we pretty much just generalized it. It was just a great bounce back and forth
Yeah.
conversation that I think I pretty much answered everything. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to be on my podcast, dude. I really appreciate it. Absolutely love your music, dude. I can't wait to hear more. Uh
Thank
amazing, amazing stuff. Usually I end my podcast with the artist always has what's the one bit of advice that you would give anybody that looks up to your music, just bored at work, listen to the podcast, or just tries to, listen to this podcast just to kind of get out of their mental funk or whatever. What word of advice do you have for anybody listening in?
whatever you are passionate about, do not give up on that ever. Fight through whatever you have to. If you're sitting at your day job and it's drudgery, find time to follow your passion when you get out of there. Believe in yourself and keep working at it, even if no one is paying attention, right? If no one cares, even if it's just for you, just stay true to yourself and stay true to your passion so that you don't get sucked into this abysmal existential mess of a world. So that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Thank you, Trey, so much. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, buddy.
Thank you.
Yep. Take it easy, bud. Thank you.